This morning, a brother down at the Pecan Grove gave me his definition of a charismatic. A charismatic, he said, is a person who kisses anything that moves. And he added, if it doesn't move, he kisses it until it does. Thank you, Arthur. This evening's homily is merely a personal reflection on what these 2 weeks of Bible study and community have meant to me, a reflection on where I find myself tonight. I just add that this homily has been considerably influenced by Father Richard Rohr's emphasis on the power of the non-rational. So I'd like to share with you as a homily a fairy tale, a parable that the Lord gave to me recently. I am more grateful for this little parable than for anything else I've written. And it is a charismatic parable aimed at adults who think like children. And it's really very important that you take on the spirit of a child to get into this. The parable is based on tonight's gospel of the Great Commandment. Now, in the parallel passage in Luke 10, after Jesus gives the Great Commandment, Luke goes on to say that the lawyer, wishing to justify himself, asked Jesus to explain the second part of the Great Commandment, love your neighbor as yourself, with the question, who is my neighbor? Jesus proceeded to tell the parable of the Good Samaritan. Apparently, Jesus was convinced that many times the telling of a story or a parable in the area of the non-rational was the most effective way of communicating a deep religious truth. But nobody asked Jesus to explain the first part of the Great Commandment. What does it mean to love God with all your heart and soul and mind and strength? So let's suppose that the Apostle Peter asked Jesus that very question. Jesus sat down on a rock with the apostles gathered about his feet and proceeded to tell them this parable. Many years into the future, in the village of Hopi, a baby was born. Not a very significant event, you'd think, except the birth of this baby was awaited with tremendous anticipation by the whole village. Why? Because the baby's great-grandfather was Irish and the great-grandmother was black. The grandfather was mulatto, the grandmother Creole, the father half Indian and the mother Spanish. This baby not only had a very mixed ancestry, but a very funny color. Not knowing what to name him, his mother called him Willie Juan, Willie-Juan. Shortly after birth, Willie Juan contracted polio and became partially paralyzed in his right leg. At the age of 5, blotches appeared on his skin. He lost all feeling in his toes and fingers. The doctors in Carville, Louisiana said it may have been the fetid waters of the Laredo River or the squalid living conditions in Hopi, but whatever the explanation, there was a strange bacillus or germ in Willie Juan's bloodstream, and he had leprosy, or as they prefer to call it, Hansen's disease. Fortunately, the disease was arrested after 3 months' treatment with a powerful, non-addictive drug, and Willie Juan was healed of his Hansen's disease, except for the blotches on his black, white, red, and gold skin. Other than that, there was nothing distinctive about Willie Juan, except for his flaming red hair. His father disappeared for long periods of time, but he wrote a letter every week from places with strange-sounding names, like Texas, Florida, Georgia, New Jersey, Maine. His mother explained to him that his father was a migrant worker, that he picked fruits and vegetables and followed the sun. Willie Juan never heard the word wetback in his whole life. And then for no apparent reason, the letters stopped coming. Willie Juan grew fearful, the whole village apprehensive, till one day a badly bruised and battered villager returned home to announce that Willie Juan's father and 17 other men from the village had been killed in a bus accident outside of Buffalo, New York. Willie Juan cried hard because he loved his father very much. Early in life, he learned that other little boys and even little girls can be cruel when they don't understand. At school, they laughed at his crazy color. They tweaked his red hair. They even kicked his gimpy leg. At the fiesta of the Virgin of the Assumption, during the tug-of-war game, his teammates suddenly let go, so that Willie Juan was the only one dragged through the slimy pool of mud. Later in the wheelbarrow race, his partner, in disgust, dumped Willie Juan into a pile of brambles filled with sharp thorns. That night, his mother bathed him after she'd picked out the sharp thorns, and she rubbed his body with a soothing aloe oil. As he fell asleep, she told him once more, as she had so many times before, about the great El Shaddai and his love for little children. How when they saw him, they flocked to him and never wanted to leave him. Well, the next day, Willie Juan was so depressed because he didn't have no friends that he just wanted to hide. So he hid in the cool, dark adobe church in the village. He sat in one of the pews, looking up at the crucifix over the main altar. It had always fascinated him, but today he decided to get a good look. So he went into the sacristy, got a ladder, brought it out, and climbed up the ladder to inspect the face of the man on the cross. Of course, he knew it was El Shaddai, but he never knew that the eyes were so sad, so gentle, and so kind. But El Shaddai looked thirsty. So Willie Juan ran down the ladder into the sacristy, got a cup of water, back up the ladder, and poured it into the mouth of the man on the cross. Of course, the water ran down the pane onto the altar below, and 3 of his classmates who'd slipped in the side door watched it all, laughed him to scorn, ran over to the rectory, and told the pastor. The pastor came over and scolded Willie Juan and told him never to tamper with holy things. Willie Juan tried to explain about the man with the sad, gentle, beautiful eyes, but the pastor only scoffed. They're just paint. And besides, he said, we live in the age of a resurrection-centered theology. And he told Willie Juan all about the parousia and eschatology and all the other wonderful things he himself had just learned from the religion section of Time magazine. Willie Juan thanked him politely, left, and promptly forgot everything he'd been told. But he did not forget the man with the sad, gentle, beautiful eyes. Well, the great day finally arrived, the fiesta of the Virgin of Guadalupe. Willie Juan had saved 78 pesetas from his earnings. He had a job. He fed Macho, the town donkey, with hay and straw each night after Macho returned from the Arriba, the well in the desert, where he brought back water to the village. Willie Juan's grandmother, Calm Sunset, had given him another 22 pesetas, so Willie Juan had almost 50 cents American money as he limped eagerly into the village square that morning. His eyes danced when he saw the carousel, the cotton candy stand, the pretty ladies in their swirling hoop skirts, the men in their sequin sombreros, worn but once a year, the crazy clown in his zebra suit, dancing about like a gazelle. With his hands in his pockets, Willie Juan roamed about, wondering whether to buy a tortilla or a tamale, when his eyes landed on an old wooden wagon at the corner of the grounds with an overhanging sign, The Great Medicine Show. Out of curiosity, Willie Juan wandered over when his heart rose in his throat. A tall, gaunt, angular man had stepped up on the buckboard, extended his arms, and was about to speak when he stared straight down at Willie Juan. The man's face was as weather-beaten as the wagon wheels, but the eyes, oh, madre, it is El Shaddai. Willie Juan knew right away, because the eyes were so sad, so gentle, so piercing, and so kind. But then the medicine man smiled, and when he smiled, his face glowed like a sunburst over the sandias at dawn. Here, little brother, he said, and he handed Willie Juan a small orange celluloid bottle. Rub 3 drops on your heart tonight, the medicine man said, and wondrous things will happen. Willie Juan reached automatically in his pocket for pesetas, but the medicine man said, what I freely received, I must freely give. A small crowd gathered, but nobody reached for a bottle of the potion, which the medicine man explained was called Amorine, and which had, he claimed, miraculous healing powers, especially for heart trouble. Ha! All I get out of that phony stuff is a good case of heartburn, one man shouted, and the crowd squealed in delight. That's true, the medicine man said quietly. Your heart would burn. But no one heard him, except Willie Juan. The crowd laughed, jeered, mocked good-naturedly, slowly drifted away. "I must charge 3 pesetas," the medicine man said. "But isn't the laborer worthy of his hire?" Still, no one took a single bottle, even when he offered to give it away. All alone now, the medicine man sat down on the buckboard. Willie Juan approached him timidly and asked in a shy voice, Senor, would the stuff in the bottle, would that make my crooked leg straight and make my blotches go away?" The medicine man reached down, sat Willie Juan up on his knee. Willie Juan was scared now. He was afraid that when the medicine man saw his skin up close, he'd start to laugh like all the other people in the village who had nicknamed him Speckled Trout. Willie Juan wasn't at all prepared for what happened now. The medicine man drew his head against his own heart. It was so warm and peaceful there that he thought of the fireplace in the hacienda, the little house where he lived. But then he felt drops of rain on his head, and he looked up to see tears of compassion flowing from the medicine man's eyes. Then he thought of his mother. But even with his mother, he'd never been loved like this before. "What's your name, little brother?" Well, Willie Juan was so excited that somebody was finally interested in him, that somebody was really taking him seriously. Feeling his fears and sensing his shame, he not only forgot about his leg and his blotches, the tortilla and the tamales, he even forgot his own name. Willie Juan, I think, senor." But as he answered, his head never left the medicine man's heart. "My medicine is so strong that it will not only straighten your crooked leg, it will straighten all winding paths and all crooked hearts. Every mountain of pride shall be leveled, every valley of pain shall be filled, and through my Amorin, all mankind will see the salvation of God." Willie Juan didn't really understand that. That was too heavy. But he did understand when the medicine man asked, "Little brother, would you like to share a piece of bread and a cup of wine with me?" Willie Juan couldn't believe it. In his whole lifetime, no one had ever invited him to dinner. In his whole lifetime, no one, except his mother in calm sunset, had ever asked him to share anything. Feelings that Willie Juan never even knew existed welled up in his heart. He reached in his pocket, pulled out all his pesetas, and shouted, "I'd buy dessert, cotton candy, lemon ices, and dandelion cookies. Woo-woo!" Well, they ate heartily. Willie Juan talked excitedly. The medicine man listened quietly. Willie Juan talked about his father and his accident, his mother and her aloe oil, how hard school was, and how he wished that he had a friend. Then he looked into the sad, gentle eyes and grew bold enough to ask, Senor, would you be my friend?" "I am your friend," the medicine man answered. "Oh, my heart is so happy. My first friend. As soon as I get home, I'm going to tell my mother in calm sunset." Well, their meal ended, and Willie Juan thought it exceedingly strange that when they gathered up the leftovers, the medicine man's lunch pail wasn't large enough to contain the fragments. "Oh, maybe I am drunk. Maybe that wine go to my head. But it is only the 3rd hour, only 9 o'clock in the morning. Oh, anything could happen on a beautiful day like this." Then, without warning, a cold chill gripped Willie Juan's heart. He thought to himself, "I had never had a friend before. I don't know how to be one. The medicine man is so kind and so good, so generous, so loving. I know I'm going to do something wrong. I always do. That's why I got no friends." Panic shook his whole little frame, and he cried out, Please tell me, what does it mean to be a friend?" "Don't let your heart be troubled," the medicine man answered. "I'll tell you what friendship means. And by the way, it means a great deal to me. I consider it life's rarest and most priceless treasure. I'll tell you the kind of friend I am, and then you decide for yourself the kind of friend you want to be. Do you hear me? You decide for yourself the kind of friend you want to be.
Yes, senor.
Willie Juan, if I speak to you with human tongues, and angelic as well, and do not love you, I'm not your friend. If I share all my knowledge with you, so that you understand all the mysteries of the universe, and do not love you, I am no friend at all. If I give all my food to feed your family and do not love you, I'm not your friend. Little brother, listen carefully.
Yes, senor.
I will always be patient with you. I will always be kind to you. I will never be jealous of your other friends. Even though I am the only son of my father, I will never put on airs with you. I will never be snobbish. I'll never be rude to you. I won't befriend you to get what I can from you. I'll be slow to anger at your faults, and I will not brood when you disappoint me. There'll be no limit to my forgiveness of your faults, to my hope in you, to my trust, to my power to endure all the difficulties of friendship. Willie Juan?
Yeah?
It seems to me that you have a very poor memory.
Yes, senor.
If you've forgotten everything I've just said, do not forget this.
No, senor. Yeah. What?
There are three things that matter in friendship: faith in your friend, trust, and the love of your friend. But the greatest of them all is the love of your friend. Willie Juan had listened attentively, but he shook his head and said,
Oh, senor, that is so beautiful. But I could never be a friend like that. I'm too weak, too moody, too dumb, too ugly.
That's why I gave you my amarine, little brother. Be sure to rub the 3 drops on your heart tonight. The first drop is called forgiveness, the second, self-acceptance, and the third, joy. After you've rubbed on the 3 drops, you'll have done your best. The spirit of the medicine man will do the rest.
Senor, but the leg, the blotches?
Now you be at peace, but after you've rubbed on the 3 drops, be sure to ask in faith, never doubting. The doubter is like the surf, tossed and driven by the wind. A man like that, devious and erratic in all that he does, must not expect to receive anything from the Lord. But you ask in faith and you'll receive, seek and you'll find, knock and the door will open. And now, Willie Juan, I must say goodbye to you, because I go home to my father.
Huh? What? No. You can't. You're my only friend. Oh. Take me with you? Huh? Would you take me with you?
No, where I'm going you can't come. It's a long journey. I must cross over the Sandias, go down through the sands of the Arizona desert, through the wilderness of the Rockies, and then through the redwood forest and over the great sea to the kingdom of my father. Ah, but in my father's house there are many dwelling places. When I get there, I'll prepare one for you. Then I'll come back and I'll take you with me so that where I am, you also may be. Good?
Yes, senor. What is your father's name?
His name is Abba. Willie Juan began to giggle.
What a funny name.
Abba. Sounds like Daba. Abba Dabba Dabba, Abba Dabba, Abba Dabba Dabba Dabba. Then he was sorry he said it, because the medicine man just told him that a friend is never rude. And maybe the medicine man was sensitive about his father's name.
I'm sorry, senor. Your father might be angry if I called him Abba Dabba.
No, little brother, my father is always pleased when you call his name, even when you play with it or mispronounce it. You know, my brothers and sisters, at the mere mention of his father's name, the medicine man's face shone like 1,000 sunbeams, and his eyes grew brilliant like starshine. Then he reached down and said, "Goodbye, Willie." Oh, By the way, thank you for the cup of water given in the name of El Shaddai. That will not go unrewarded." Then he embraced Willie Juan, kissed him on both cheeks, kissed him on the lips, smiled his warmest smile, blessed him with his peace, and departed. Willie Juan was so excited that he ran, skipped, jumped, danced all the way home. He even sang, even though his teacher in the 3rd grade, Sister Mary Picayune, told him never to sing in church. Told him that his voice was the abomination of desolations, whatever that meant. He sang anyway, a tune he remembered from the Sunday folk mass. "Oh, he called the little children and sat him on his knee. Glory, sing to the Lord. Then he kissed them and caressed them till they didn't want to leave him. Glory, sing to the Lord. Glory." Well, that night, after he confided to his mother and calm sense it, the joy of his newfound friend, Willie Juan ate a light supper, went to his room, closed the door, knelt down beside his bed, opened the small orange celluloid bottle, and began to rub the first drop of amarine, forgiveness of others, on his heart. Ah! Whoa! Ah! Did that hurt? Even Willie Juan hadn't realized how deeply the other little boys and even the little girls had hurt him. But he rubbed away anyhow because that's what the medicine man said. Now, this is when the wondrous thing happened. What normally took the spirit of the medicine man years to accomplish in the average man took place immediately in Willie Juan's open, childlike, transparent heart, and for the first time in his life, he began to pray aloud. Oh, he'd said prayers before that he learned at home and school, but this night when he prayed, incidentally, years later, wise men would say it was the night that he was baptized in the Holy Spirit. For this is how Willie Juan prayed.
"Oh, Señor, Son of Apadapa, El Shaddai, my friend, please don't leave me, and don't ever let me leave you. Do you know what it's like to wake up in the morning and know that you have a friend who'll be happy with you when you're happy, but who won't laugh at you or throw you in the brambles when you're dumb? Just walk beside me with your hand in my hand for friendship's sake and for the joy of being together. Even if you were funning, Senor, about my leg and my blotches, I don't care. I'd be happy to stay just as I am, if only you would stay with me. You said I don't remember so good, and I don't. But I remember the one thing you said mattered the most. I love you, my friend. Please don't go. Don't ever let me walk away from you. All I want is you, Senor. All I want is you.
You see, as the drops of amarine entered Willie Juan's heart, they coursed through his whole bloodstream and opened his eyes to see how empty life would be without his friend. That thought so staggered his mind and appalled his heart that from that night his life would never be the same. The drops of amarine also opened his eyes to see that right at the bottom of his own little heart he had but one burning desire, not for the things that the medicine man promised, but for the medicine man himself. All I want is you, Senor. All I want is you. Jesus arose from the rock on which he was seated, and said to the apostles, that is what it means to love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind and strength. Wait a minute. Time out. What happened to his leg and his blotches? As you might suspect, it was Simon Peter, impetuous and a little unglued. Jesus stared at the ground for a long time. At last he raised his eyes and said, Simon, son of John, to those who understand, no words are necessary. To those who do not understand, no words are possible. When you become like a little child, when you open your heart to my Spirit without any fear or reservation, then you will love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind and strength. Though this is not recorded in either the Gospel of Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, everybody understands that this is what has come to be known in Christian history as the parable of the Amorim of El Shaddai. As you know, my brothers and sisters, Amorim comes from the Latin amor, meaning love. El is the Hebrew word for God. And if I understand it right, the word shad in Hebrew in the singular means a woman's breast. Because of the poverty of the Hebrew language, the plural Shaddai means mountains or twin breasts. So when the Israelite prayed to God under the invocation of El Shaddai, they appealed to the maternal, the feminine, the tender, the gentle side of God. The Amorim of El Shaddai is simply the love of our tender God. As I finish these 2 weeks of Bible study, I think the only prayer that really rises from my heart tonight in joyful thanksgiving is all I want is you, Senor. All I want is you. I've asked the music ministry to lead us in a response to the word by singing the song of Willie Juan. And the refrain of the song, give me only your love and your grace, that's enough for me, is a faithful echo of Willie Juan's cry, all I want is you, Senor.